Hello again and welcome to The Luxury Choice, a B2B sales skills and business podcast brought to you by the training team of George James Limited. My name is Steve Vaughan. I'm a senior sales trainer with George James and I'm also the host and producer of this podcast. And today you'll find me and my two colleagues, Christian Walter and Pascal Floche. I never get your last name right, Pascal, so my apologies. Pascal Floche. And we're sitting here in a very echoey farmhouse in North Staffordshire because we've had a team meeting here today, guys. Anyway, Christian, Pascal, how are you?
Hey, good. It's been a very productive day.
It has, hasn't it? Yeah. How are you, Pascal?
Oh, very fine. I mean, very inspiring, very energizing day. So, yeah, very pleased to be here.
Good. So today, it's the second podcast of our new series. And if you were with us, dear listener, on the last one, you'll know that what we're doing in this series, we're kind of alternating between salesperson's content and sales manager's content. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, if you're a salesperson, you can't listen to the sales managers and vice versa. But that's kind of what we're doing in terms of a cadence, for want of a better word. And today, this is our first one, really, that we hope that sales managers will find of interest, particularly the new sales managers, because today the topic really is, what do we do? What are the things we need to think about when we've been promoted into our first sales management role? Particularly if we've been promoted from within the team. So in other words, you were part of the team and now the boss. So that's happened to me. I think it's happened to all of us, at some stage. So right at the get-go, Christian, what are your thoughts about that? And what was it like when it happened to you, for example?
Yeah, it's a big moment.
It is.
I think, you obviously you did well in your job. It's a recognition that you get promoted into a leadership role. Yeah. It was my first commercial leadership role, and I was obviously very excited, very energetic, to try to do the very best I could, and probably made loads of mistakes. And I think we're going to go through those in a little while.
Sure. Yeah. We were working for the same organisation at the time as well, but that's history. So what about you, Pascal? What was it like for you?
Yeah, let's say that it's a great souvenir, as we say in French. And I do remember, anyway, feedback from my manager at that time when I was promoted. And he said, "Look, Pascal, are you sure you want to get into it?" I said, "Yes, I'm motivated." But he insisted on the fact that you have to realize that your life will become very different. And your freedom will decrease a lot. But your responsibilities, you'll increase a lot. So I got it, and I was persistent, and I say, I still want to go for it.
And you did, and the rest is history, as they say. Yeah, that's another podcast, actually, but still, we'll get there. So, I mean, thinking back when it happened to me, really, I think one of the first things I found most difficult, really, was not knowing what I could and couldn't do. I don't know if that makes sense, in terms of, okay, I'm now the boss. What can I do? What can't I do? I don't mean in terms of approving stuff. I mean in terms of the dimension of the role. Does that make sense, Christian? Yeah?
I think it makes a lot of sense. I believe if you are good in your job and you got promoted, then you kind of think, hey, I need to be the best in that team, the best in sales, the best in our duties. And actually, that's not necessarily true. What you need to do in a new leadership role is to bring the best out of people. And it requires kind of different skills. And for me, that was a learning process, because at first I thought everybody had to be exactly like me.
That's only one of you, Christian. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. And I think also, and apologies, I'm going to use football as an analogy here, but often the best footballer doesn't make the best manager, and often the best manager wasn't the best footballer, really, was they? Really, so is it a case of knowing what's expected of you, Pascal? Is that part of it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have to realize that becoming a manager, you crossed the line. So what I mean here is the way people look at you is different from before. And it took a while for me to realize this. And let's say when I started as a manager, I wanted to keep the relationships, the good relationships I had with team members as before. And it was really a mistake. And not because you have to become very different and you have to stop relationships, but you have to realize that the way you behave or the way you are has to be a bit different, because you have to drive the team to results, but you have to support them as well. So your position becomes different, and you have to adjust.
Absolutely. And I think it's why, again, to use a football analogy, being the player manager is always a difficult one in our role. Having your own territory and also being the boss as well. I don't think that ever works particularly well. I think we've got that for another podcast for another day. But so it's almost like you've stepped over a line, Christian. Really, you've moved into a new dimension.
I like that metaphor. That image is a good image. You step over a line, and I think many young leaders make the mistake that they stay too close to some of their team members, perhaps share too much, perhaps try to maintain that original closeness they had when they were colleagues. And I certainly did that, and I learned quickly it's not working. It brings disruption into the team, and for me the luck was that I found a very good mentor within my company who wasn't my line manager. He had nothing to do directly with me. He was just short of retirement.
Okay.
And he was actually very good at having these conversations with me about what could be discussed with the team, what I had to keep to myself. And, and you have to demand performance. It's not about having fun all the time. In the end, it's about delivering results.
Yeah, I think if you were particularly close to one or two members of the team, they were your best mates, all of a sudden you're their boss, really. And I think it's recognizing that relationship has changed. It doesn't mean you can't be friendly, but then, you got to know, I always think it's like you got to know when to leave the party almost.
Yeah.
I don't mean an actual party, but you didn't know when it's time to say, hey guys, I've got to step away now, really. That makes sense, Pascal? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And back to the soccer analogy you used, let me come back on this. As I was very successful in sales, and that was the reason I was promoted. And one of the reasons, I would say, because managers saw my potential for management more than me, I would say. But as I was very used to close deals and be successful, I wanted to go on the ground and close deals instead of others, instead of the team members.
Got you.
And that was a real mistake, because your role is not to do things anymore, is get things happening through others. And that's a key aspect of the management or the manager role. I would highly recommend to think about it, get things done by others and supporting them to make it happening.
Absolutely. Christian?
Yeah, I was just trying to look back in these first 3 years of being a leader. I think I worked harder than at any time before or after, because I was trying to do everything, to compensate if somebody didn't do a good job, to teach people, to help them get better, but I was still trying to do the work myself. So I was the player manager.
Yeah.
And so I went into the office every Saturday morning as well to catch up with paperwork, and in the end it cost me a relationship as well. Yeah. That was the end of we weren't married at the time, but my partner of 8 years, she decided that no, enough is enough. And so with hindsight, I think it is really important to realize what is your responsibility, and your responsibility is not to do and to compensate for your team members. Your responsibility is to develop your team members and to make sure they can do the job.
Super point. Yeah. Yeah. You're not now the super salesman. You're the leader of the team, and you're only as good as your team, really. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's a big step forward. It's a big step up. Getting a mentor, I think, is a great idea. Yeah. And having somebody you can go to and say, I'm struggling with this, or I need some support. What about your manager? So, one of the things I learned very early on when I became a sales manager for the first time is that sort of classical squeeze. You've got the team below you wanting stuff from you. You've got your manager above you definitely wanting stuff with you. How did you manage that, Pascal? How did you cope with that?
Yeah, I think it maybe it took a while before I realized how I could handle this correctly. So first of all, it was a stepwise process for me. So first of all, I wanted to be more comfortable with my team. And then I started to be clear about, okay, what I was expected to deliver for my team, but also for the business. And when I mentioned this, of course, what the company expected from me. So that means that you have to know your numbers, and your numbers is your team numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that was the first thing. The second thing is that, okay, what I'm supposed to do to act as a manager to support my team correctly. So supporting the team, being present for them, stand up to defend your team if there is a good reason for it, but also being brave enough to have crucial conversations and to provide feedback. If something is good, fine, you have to communicate it. But if you have to get a difficult conversation, don't escape for it. Don't wait for any time, or because the longer you wait for, the worse it could be.
Yeah, it's a great point, really. And I think sometimes you're almost like a filter, both ways, if that makes sense. There's some things that you need to pass up through from your team to higher management. Some things that need to come down from higher management through you, but perhaps not everything.
I think sometimes you need to have broad shoulders and a strong umbrella to kind of protect your team from some of the stuff that comes from higher down.
Yeah. Okay. Enough said. Yeah.
and if you have to stand up for your people. I have absolutely no time for managers who complain about their own team members.
Yeah, totally.
Because that's in my responsibility. If I'm the boss and I'm not happy, I have to address the topic like Pascal said. You have to have the conversation and say, hey, I'm not happy with that. And the sooner you do it, the better. Don't wait for the annual appraisal.
Yeah.
Do it as and when. But I think it's a fine line of course, you need to also transfer the company strategy and what is expected and make sure that the team members understand that and ask for performance and effort.
That corporate strategy is a super important point because so often when I train sales teams, they don't seem to know what their own company strategy is really, and that has to come from obviously from their own activity, but from their own manager as well. Let me come back to a word that you both used earlier on, which was develop their team, really. And you're both, quote coaches. You're both, experienced coaches as well as trainers, really. How important, Pascal, is coaching in managing your team? And perhaps even more fundamental than that, what is coaching as opposed to training?
Yeah. Let me answer this way. First of all, let me share some mistakes I made. So, as a new manager, let's say I was tempted to stay in my comfort zone, keep doing what I was good for. And this is a definition of insanity from Einstein. So if you keep doing things as before, how could you expect different results?
Absolutely.
So anyway, so when I started as a manager, I knew that I had to get one-to-one sessions with any of the team members. So as soon as I started this, I had difficulties to anticipate what was the good things to do or to discuss. So I was, let's say, the temptation was the following: discussing about the numbers and discussing about the ongoing deals and what the next step is. But I totally forgot to check how my team members went, the feelings they had, how they perceived me, what could be another way to work with them. Was it okay so far? How could I adjust to be a better, manager? All those things, which make sense.
So the one-to-one was really just a forecast review call.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I think many managers fall into that trap.
Yeah. And step by step, I realized that it doesn't bring us anywhere. So things are not moving as I expected. I have the one-to-one sessions, but things are not improving. So probably there is something wrong with me. And then finally I realized, okay, it's time to do it differently. And this is where the coaching dimension comes.
Okay.
Because it's not so much about the short-term aspects. It's more about the long-term development of your people, of your team members. It's not your team, but it's the teammates. So as a manager, you have to take care of them and making sure that they see their future, they project themselves in the company, and they can see that they can grow thanks to your support. And then you become a manager as a coach.
Great points. Christian, you wanted to say something here?
Yeah, I think one of the problems I had and many people have in leadership, in one-to-one interaction with their team, is they tell the people what to do.
Yeah.
They think if only they did it like I would do it, it would be all right. Yeah. So I tell them what to do, and it doesn't work because it's not actually working for them. They would do it differently, and then we don't achieve progress. So I think what is really important in these leadership interactions is to ask questions to find out, hey, what do you need to improve on that particular topic, or what do you need to do to get this opportunity to the next stage, or to solve that technical problem that needs solving. And perhaps you could also, or I learned to ask as well, how can I help? Because I think that's in a way the biggest role of a leader. How can we help our team members to achieve and to become better at what they're doing?
Some super points there. I think so many managers fall into the trap of, we're all short time. I've got half an hour with this guy. Right, this is what you need to do. Get on and do it. Tell me when you've done it, really. And just occasionally, as a manager, you have to do a bit of that, perhaps. But what you really want to do with your team is to say, well, where do you want to go with this? Where would what's your ideas? Because if people come up with their own ideas, they're far more likely to action them than if they get told what to do in all walks of life, let alone sales, really. So great. So the importance of coaching. What about coaching in the field? Because it's one thing to talk about sitting in a meeting room or even over Teams, dare I say, and having a coaching session. But what about in the field with the sales team? What are your thoughts on that one, Pascal?
Yeah, maybe just to provide some addition.
Yeah, please.
To the previous topic. So when this is about the one-to-one sessions, there is something, there is one rule here, which is very important, is that you should not remove any of those sessions for emergency reasons, unless, there is fire in the building.
That's a great point.
But getting those one-to-one sessions is key for long-term success, and to build also a trusted environment and trusted relationships with your team members. So in the case you would have to postpone it, you have not to cancel it, but to postpone it. You have to reschedule as soon as possible with your team member, but please don't make it as a habit. So otherwise, your team members will behave as yours. So that was my addition.
That's a great point. Yeah.
And now back to your question: how to coach on the field? First you have to keep visiting customers with your team members, and one very effective thing I learned on the field with people is. First, you agree about the roles, who will do that in front of the customer. When you are in front of the customer, there is no problem to, let's say, give the information to the customers that, okay, I will be here as a manager, and here my team member will take the lead. I will be in the background and will be ready to support. But the goal is to help him or her to grow in skills and get a better way, or let's say even better way, to support you as a customer. And I never saw any customer, being against this.
No,
they all liked it a lot.
Yeah.
So being silent, listening, and then after the meeting, that's a good time to debrief.
Absolutely. Yeah. Christian.
Yes, I think the time spent in the car is extremely valuable.
I used to call it windscreen time.
Yeah, and we don't look at each other, so it's a lot easier to talk. It's like going for a walk with each other. I think is a lot better than sitting in a meeting room.
Completely.
I believe we can learn a lot about the person during a day out visiting customers, not just about how they do with the customers, but what is important for them in their life. So how about their private life? What makes them tick? What makes them happy? And I think this is important for a good employee boss relationship. And yes, I think it's a fantastic opportunity to provide feedback, or I prefer the word feed forward.
Yeah, I love that.
Because that, in the end, we can only do better the next time. We cannot change the past.
We don't have time machines, do we? No,
exactly.
No.
But then, you can discuss what went well, what could we do differently. And then the most important thing, I believe, after a day out visiting customers is that the sales guy goes home totally motivated and excited, and oh wow, today was an excellent day and I learned a lot and my boss was happy, and because then they're doing a much better job.
I've got a confession to make, actually. My very first sales job, which was a long time ago, selling chemicals in London, I was spending a day out in the field. He wasn't my boss, he was my boss's boss, actually. And he completely destroyed me during the day. I mean, I was a rookie. There was a lot of things I did wrong, but all he did was rip pieces out of me, And I was terrified of this guy. And it's the one and only time I've ever pretended to be ill the next day, because I was supposed to go out with him next day. And I had a tummy upset, and I'm not proud to admit to that. But he was just horrendous. And, if you want to spend time in your field to make you look good and make your employee look tiny, that's how to do it. But that's not what we want to do as professional managers. You want to, yes, if you had a bad day with in the field, yes, there's things to learn, but don't destroy your team member. Don't destroy the person in the field. It amazes me how few sales managers regularly travel with their team these days. And I can think of nothing more important than spending time in their field, coaching their team, because you only see them working in their job in the field, don't you?
Fully agree with that.
Yeah.
I always learned a lot about the customers. I learned a lot about the way the salesperson worked. I mean, I was responsible for many different sales teams in different countries, so it was also very interesting to see how it works in India, how it works in Korea, how it works in Japan, and but even if you have a small team, I think to go out and spend time visiting customers will help with the relationship, will help with the understanding of some person's weaknesses and strengths, and will help with the motivation of the team member.
Completely.
And I may add something, and thanks, Christian, because it's so valuable. Visiting customers helps you to stay connected to the reality.
Oh, it's a super point.
Customer needs.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Otherwise, you may end up with getting some ideas of how the business should work. But the point is, reality is on the ground, in the field. Okay.
Yeah, completely.
So, and as you said, Christian, doing so, you have a better chance to adjust the coaching mode and where your teammates are and what the next step could be. And you can define this with them, and they feel empowered. They feel even more motivated, as you said.
I love that word. In the end, if you're in sales, you have to be empowered. You can't do a sales job if you feel like a small cogwheel in a big machine. You are representing the company when you visit the customer.
Capital R, representative. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you have to be proud and empowered. Otherwise, you can't do a good job.
That's completely right. So, guys, we've stepped up, from the sales team. We're the new sales manager. We're no longer one of the team. We're up and running as a sales manager. Presumably, at some stage, we've got to replace ourselves in the team. Hopefully, anyway. So we've now got a vacancy in the team, our old territory. What are the things we need to think about there? What are the traps we can fall into there as well? I can think of loads that I do. But Christian, Ismani, what are your thoughts?
It's exactly what happened to me. I hired people that were very similar to myself, and I don't know. That was I think it's a pitfall many of us fall into. And then all of a sudden, I had too many people in the team that had my strengths and weaknesses, and that wasn't helpful. So I believe it's important to look at the needs that a particular role has, and then also involve other people in the hiring process. Make it a team process rather than just the boss taking a decision.
Your thoughts, Pascal?
Yeah, I think I went through the same type of trap as well. And although I was convinced about, let's say, the diversity which could bring more value as a team, as a human being, you have a conscious or unconscious bias to look for people close to your style. And you should resist there. So I think looking at very different type of people who could be complementary to build, an excellent team, is it what you need to look for and look at as a manager?
Yeah, great point. And in series 1, I talked to a lady called Jo, who's managing director of Belbin UK. In fact, we were talking about Belbin today in our training. So if you haven't heard that episode, listening, go back and catch it. But Belbin, if you don't know, is a way of understanding people's preferred team roles in the team. And that, I think, is a great tool to use in terms of understanding what you've got already in the team and what's missing, because that can help then define the kind of person you're looking for. If you've got a team of great sort of creative people, but nobody ever gets anything done, you might want to get a completer finisher into the team or that kind of thing. Would that be an idea, do you think, Christian? Yeah?
I think it's a very good idea. Yeah. The more we know about our current team members, the better we understand where are the gaps and what would we need to find to cover those gaps.
So I think one of the biggest challenges sales managers face, particularly in the modern world of Teams, Microsoft Teams, the internet, email, is just managing everything, keeping on top of everything, coping, not doing, as you said, Christian, working on Saturday mornings. I also, unfortunately, had a relationship fail and it was a marriage through, working too hard and not spending enough time at home, really. So how do we avoid getting into that trap, Pascal, in trying to do everything?
Yeah, so first of all, you have to be clear about what you will stop doing, what your priorities are. So starting every single week, being very clear about what your top priorities are. Maximum 3 of them, no more. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you achieve them by the end of the week, and you'll be pleased, but you'll be also very effective.
Yeah.
And it helped me a lot. So another thing is about finding time to think and to reflect. One of the traps is to go after, every single day and answering all the emergency calls and so on. But you have to find time for yourself to look at the strategic dimension, the tactical aspects for the team, and make sure you keep, again, time for the one-to-one session.
That was a bit I always found the hardest, was finding time for me, to do the stuff I needed to do. You wanted to be there for your team, of course, and you've got the stuff coming from on high, but how do I find time for me? Christian, you're going to say something?
Yeah. I really, really like that metaphor, that experiment where you put some big stones in a glass, and then they put some pebbles in, and they fit in between the big stones, and you then add some sand, and the sand has space in the glass amongst the pebbles and the big stones. And then at the end, you could even pour a glass of beer into that, and it still fits,
What a waste of beer.
and I think that the metaphor is if you do the big things first, if you look after your big rocks first,
absolutely,
the rest will fit. If you actually start with the sand, neither the pebbles nor the big rocks will fit, and then you're in exactly the situation I was 30 years ago.
Yeah, about the same for me. Yeah.
Scary, really.
I know.
When I was working all hours God sent,
yeah.
And I believe with hindsight or with learning a lifetime of business experience, I think you become better at prioritizing, and prioritizing is extremely important for any manager.
And one additional tip maybe for new sales manager is it's important to schedule the unexpected in your diary.
Okay, tell me more.
For instance, if you have an average of 20% of your time for unexpected things and you save it in your calendar, you're on the safe side as well, because the unexpected will come.
Oh, better believe it, yeah.
And if by any chance it doesn't, then you save 1 or 2 hours a day. That's fantastic. And then you can allocate this to anything else.
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. So great tips, guys. So, for any of the new sales managers or even perhaps slightly more experienced sales managers out there, I'm sure there's a lot of things they will have taken from today's session. If there's one final tip from both of you, one final suggestion, what would that be? Christian, have you got one?
I want to talk about the annual appraisal process.
Good one.
Because I think most companies have that now.
Of course.
You sit down together, both sides prepare. There's some questions to answer, and I think it's an extremely important process. It's extremely important to take the time, reflect back on the year, what went well, and where can we learn from? What can we do differently in the future? I believe what we should always try and ensure is that the employee leaves this annual appraisal happy and motivated and full of energy, and that the positive is dominant and not the negative, and not the feeling, oh, I'm not good enough and somehow I haven't done a good job even though I may have achieved my target. I think it's really important that those employees we're happy with, we want to keep working together. The annual appraisal needs to be an absolute highlight of the year, and they feel like, oh, my boss listens to me and takes me seriously, and we should try and make the employee talk for most of the time and just listen, and then it will be a very successful exercise.
Great point. So I was always taught no surprises at appraisals. Yeah, there should be nothing that comes out of the appraisal that the employee wasn't expecting to hear, or they weren't expecting to tell you, for that matter. Yeah. One gem from you, Pascal?
Yeah, probably we had no time to develop this so much. So what is important is that as a manager and also as a coach, as a manager, you are not anymore the one on the ground, scoring goals. So what I mean here is that you give your team the credit every time there is an achievement. That's very important.
Love that.
But when there is a failure, you take the responsibility.
That's a great point. Great point. Yeah. We're in it together. Yeah. Yeah. And recognize the success when it's due, but also take the flak when it's due as well. Yeah.
And it doesn't prevent you to have, let's say, the adequate conversation with anyone on the team. But at least, they know that, okay, you are accountable as you expect they are accountable for their numbers. You are accountable for the team result, success, and failure.
Fantastic, guys. We could talk all day about this one, I'm sure, but we've got a takeaway curry on order. So it's our team dinner for the end of today. If you want to know more about Christian and Pascal, then you can find more details about their background and also the services they offer on the George James Training website, and of course on their LinkedIn pages, links to which are in the show notes. If you have enjoyed the show today, then dear listener, then don't forget to subscribe to the show. It means you'll get each episode coming into your podcast app and your inbox every 2 weeks. Also, don't forget to give us a review on Apple and Spotify. It does help us in lots of mysterious ways. I'll be back again in 2 weeks with 2 more of my colleagues from the George James team. We'll be looking more again at the salesperson's role. Particularly, we're going to be looking at how we cope with rejection and the word no, something that none of us like to hear. In the meantime, have a great week out there and happy selling.